Welcome back, guys, to the Tomb 45 YouTube channel, and we're going to be bringing you guys a really cool tutorial today, man. My client, his hair is like super thick. He needs something that's a little easier to manage, so we're pretty much just gonna even him out on top, look to about a 5 or a 6, like a dark guard length, and just give him a nice clean low fade to complement pretty much just the shape of his head overall, man. So yeah, we're gonna get right into that. So this tutorial is gonna be focused on efficiencies and a solid system that you can follow to do any type of haircut, any type of hair texture, for example. So yeah, let's get right into it. So the process for evening out the hair on top is gonna be relatively simple, guys. If you're gonna be cutting a tight buzz cut on the top that's still dark, of course, you're just gonna wanna cut against the grain at all times. So really what we're talking about when we say against the grain, you can see here, this hair is naturally gonna be flowing in this direction. So that means that when I put my guard here on the T45FX, I'm gonna follow that exactly opposite, right? So if the hair is growing down, you cut up. If it's cutting to the right, you cut left, vice versa. And especially right here in this area too, like you can see this cowlick is growing kind of crazy. So you're gonna wanna make sure that we hit this in all different directions so that way we can make sure that we give them a nice, tight, even cut that's gonna work all the way through. So let's go ahead and keep on working through here. Same thing here, the hair growth direction is always gonna change around the crown. So this hair up here forward is growing this way. We're gonna have to hit it there. This is growing downwards. We're gonna have to go right up against there. And y'all can see, man, the power of this clipper, man, it's not leaving any hairs behind. You know, the hair will split off in different directions, but if you pay attention to that and you just be diligent while you're doing these passes, you can make sure that no hairs are left behind and you get it all in nice even trim. So now as far as establishing the fade, pretty much first we're gonna wanna picture, visualize in our head, like, okay, this is where we're gonna want this fade to be, right? His hair does look good, you know, when we kind of leave a little bit of darkness right here on the corner. So what I'm gonna do is with my clipper closed, and again, the reason I go with clipper closed is because, in my opinion, in my experience, if we punch it in with the trimmer, it's gonna leave a really harsh line that sometimes can be hard to take out. Let's go ahead and set this line in here with the clipper all the way closed in this shape so it could complement the shape of his head and it could leave just a little bit of hair right here on the corner. So let's go ahead and do this all the way around. So you've got the foundation set now for this fade. We can see the shape that we're going for, but now we're gonna have to give ourselves a little bit of space to fade. And when I say space, I mean I'm gonna come in here with the half guard closed. Now this step is totally up to preference. Some people are gonna prefer to take the guard off and use the clipper open, for example. But I also find that it's a softer line, it's an easier line to work with. If I go in here and I mirror this shape, the same shape that I put in with the clipper all the way closed, if I can mirror that with this clipper closed with a half guard, it's gonna be a little bit of a softer line, a little bit easier to work with. But again, it's totally up to you guys, man, whatever you're most comfortable with. If you're really used to working with the clipper open to set this half line in, that's okay. Just make sure not to punch it in too hard, you know, slightly elevate at the top just so you can leave a softer finish, something easier to work with. So the Tomb 45 set of clippers right here, we're gonna be using the number 4. If I keep my fingers tight here, if I keep this guard tight, you see it's gonna be able to remove some bulk, but I'm gonna keep a straight up and down motion. And even here off the side of the head, you can see I'll be keeping a straight up and down motion, kind of using the shape of his head as a ramp for this clipper. And we're gonna be doing that over and over again with the 4, with the 3 and 2, all the way down. But yeah, let's go ahead and start debulking. The reason that we're gonna go through all these different numbers and different guards is because we're gonna want a super smooth, super buttery finish. You know, I'm an advocate for understanding the process, like memorize the process, but not necessarily the steps. And what I mean by that is the process in this case was set the foundation for where you want that main transition of this fade to be. And then take care of the blending process. You want to slowly soften this area here, and then eventually you're gonna fade here. When I say the steps, you could switch up the steps depending on what you're comfortable with and depending on your experience level. But as you learn your fading system, as you learn what you're comfortable with, you might decide, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and skip the 3 and the 2 today, for example. So that's why I feel like understanding the process, but not necessarily memorizing the steps. You have to customize and tailor that to every customer that you have in your chair. We're gonna do those same motions with the 1.5 open, with the 1.5 closed, and we're just being careful to keep a very soft touch towards the top of the fade, so that way we don't go in and punch any new lines. We already knocked that out with the 1.5 open. Now we're gonna come up in here with the 1.5 closed, and now we're back down here, guys, now to the 1 guard. This is the 1 open, and then we're gonna follow up with the 1 closed. And y'all can see like the motions of the clipper, And where I'm putting each of these guards is very, very similar. But the thing is that every time that I reduce the length, we're working our way lower and lower, like incrementally lower, to where you won't even really notice it. Now, what we're gonna do is pretty much focus on this bottom section, right? This bottom fade. We're gonna start from closed and working our way back up. We're gonna meet now in the middle. So let's go ahead and watch this process. First, we're gonna break through this guideline here that we set with the clipper closed, and what better tool to do that with than the clipper closed. If I set that in with the clipper all the way closed, I'm pretty much gonna start here softening it up with the same tool that I used to put it in. Here's the clipper closed right here. So that was a lever closed. Here's our first notch. I'm just gonna let that fall right into that notch, and same thing here. We're just gonna be breaking through this line using the corners. If you notice, I'm leaning kind of on the corner of the blade a little more. Let's go one more notch. And as we continue to work our way up and up into this blend, we're gonna continue elevating this lever. One more notch here. Now we are here all the way open. Now this last little section right here, we should be able to fade this out and detail the fade now using the half guard. Remember, we set that line initially with the half guard closed. So what better tool to take that out with than the half guard? Let's go ahead and go half guard, and I'm gonna start closed here, right? We're gonna, again, break through that line that we did with the half guard closed and just keep on opening it up. We're gonna keep on opening that thing up as we move higher and higher into the fade. And then also, guys, as I go through this side of the fade right here, I want to remind you guys that we have all of these tutorials organized in our free school group. And that link is going to be in the description below, our free Zoom 45 school. And tutorials from me, from Jordan, from More Fades, Beam, all of us are going to be putting free tutorials and continue to organize these videos for you guys. So they're just way easier to navigate, man. Like, you guys are going to be able to learn from so many different educators that work with Zoom 45. So, you know, if you guys like how we do our teaching style, man, you're definitely going to want to subscribe to that. And it's free, definitely free to join. So go ahead and check the link in the description down below for that as well. Just finished with the 2. Now we're gonna go here down to the 1.5, and we're just gonna continue working our way down, man. You know, these guards definitely haven't failed me yet, man. Like, the way that the sharpness of the teeth is just enough that it could slice through the hair really nice without really irritating the skin. You know, some other guards out there definitely have almost like too sharp of a tooth, you know. So I'm definitely a big fan of these, man. They glide through the skin, but also through the hair easily. I felt like they found that sweet, that middle ground. All right, we're continuing working our way down, man. Here's that 1 guard. Now, if you remember from the other side of the fade, once we got down to the 1 open and then the 1 closed, what was the next step that we did, right? Do you guys remember, like, it's have like a Blue's Clues moment, you know, what's coming next? So after we're done with this, we're gonna jump right back to the very bottom of this fade. And we're gonna break through that clipper closed line and blend that thing up, man. Sometimes at this point too, it's really nice to switch over to a bristle brush, like how you saw me doing there, because the one thing about fading like this, right, when you're down to like the skin tight levels, is every little hair counts, right? So I want to make sure that while I'm looking here, I'm looking at actual hair that's still growing on the head that actually needs to be cut. You see, like if I'm using a comb, for example, if it's not like a super fine tooth comb, then it may leave some hairs behind. See, like you can see them little hairs right there, but the bristle brush is gonna be able to swipe those off real quick, so you can always be looking at a true state of what's still growing on the head and what actually still needs to be cut. So clipper closed, we broke through, notch 1. So let me know down in the comment section below too, guys. Are you somebody that you think you would prefer to fade out this first panel, right, the 0 to the half? Would you want to fade that out first? Or are you a fan of how it came together in this haircut tutorial today, where we kind of faded down and then saved that 0 to half blend for the very end, right? So you can kind of meet everything together in the middle. And of course, guys, these clippers too, man, they are available already. We're filming now in March, and this is the same month that we ended up shipping them out, man. So definitely get your orders in. The links is gonna be in the description of this video, and they hit, man. You can see how well the clipper blends together. But what I'm really excited to show you guys next is how well they balled out, because that's gonna be the ultimate test of every trimmer, right? How does doesn't handle balding out through this bulk hair here at the bottom. Along with the lineups, of course you need that sharp lineup, but if it tugs through the neck hair, if it rips through, you know, like tugging at the pores when you're balding out and fading, you know, that could be an issue, right? So we're gonna put a live test so I can show you guys how well these machines actually perform. All right, guys, so now we're gonna go ahead and get into the balding out portion. Now remember, this is gonna be a really easy step because I started this clipper off, even though it looks bald, I started this fade with that clipper closed length. So when I go underneath that now, using the trimmer, right, we can just float right up into that length. And we're not gonna have to do all this fighting back and forth, you know. If I punched in the line with the trimmer too hard, then I would be having to go back and forth from the clipper with the grain, against the grain with the trimmer, the shaver, the clipper. Like we would be having to bounce between all those different tools. And you guys know how that is if you punch the line in too hard at first. If I come in here with this trimmer, man, and just float up into the clipper close, you can see how much easier this comes together. So let's watch this thing feed through the hair, man. I'm gonna comb through, you know, full pressure all the way through, and then just lighten it up at the very top so it blends right in. But you can see that thing, man. You can hear the hair being crunched through this blade too. And I don't know, that was a big emphasis too, man, when we were designing the trimmer and the clipper set, right? Is you want it to have that audible crunch, that satisfying kind of feedback almost that the blade gives you as you hear the hair just feeding through the blades. It's really exciting that they were able to capitalize on that and really execute well. I go down with the grain first, and then I could go ahead and just flick out at the very bottom there. So y'all can see, there's no line left. So same thing, guys, we're gonna go ahead and just down with the grain, soften it up, and then flick out at the very bottom. And we're gonna take that all the way around, you know, kind of like grazing over the fade area, man. I feel like it kind of just like, it almost trims down all the tips of the hair that's sticking out, man. Just make sure that all of it just feeds real nice and lays down real nice into the fade. But boy, you talk about crunch, man. That's a satisfying crunch sound right there. So the first thing that I always like to do, guys, is let's make sure that all of the oils are gone. All the oils, all the sweat. You know, if I just keep it simple, right, and I use a high percentage alcohol right up in here, let's make sure that we wipe it all down and we'll get rid of any grime, any kind of sweat that might get in the way of our trimmers hitting crispy. And now what we can do again, guys, is we can use a little bit of lining spritz here. You know, whether it's an aerosol hairspray, whether it's liquid razor, whatever the brand is, right? Just a little bit of holding spray here. So we can also make sure to continue to stiffen up the hair just a little bit so it's ready for that trimmer to hit. Now that the hair is clean, now we gotta hold it in place. While we're lining him up, we can also start to apply some enhancements without even really darkening his hair. We can use the pencil. So for example, I'll be applying first the beige color. We'll be able to put this all the way down here. And now since my client is of a lighter complexion, I can also use the other side of the Tomb 45 pencil. I can use the white here, blend it in here with the beige, and that's gonna give us the perfect blend that we can use while lining him up. So we're not gonna push that any farther than it already grows. So before I pick up any pencil here, we're just gonna first start working away, chipping away at this widow's peak right here in the middle. Now, the reason I say that we can go ahead and do this first before we apply the pencil is, you know, I don't want the trimmer to go ahead and like be getting caught up and moving too much hair. Pretty much, I don't want the pencil to have to push through a lot of hair, right? So if we can just clear this out here, and we're slowly trying to make this side a little more even to here. And if you look closely, the only hairs that were really pushed back was really just the widow's peak. You know, that could be considered a professional pushback right there, right? If that's gone, now we can go ahead and start applying the pencil all the way across here. And my preferred application process is gonna be to put the tip of the trimmer blade into the glove, right? So you can just pick up just a little bit at a time, and it can apply it real nice, real thin, real natural looking. And it could also spread it all in the same swooping motion. Slide my clipper to the opposite direction, you know, so you kind of counteract the growth pattern. So if you go against the grain at all times, whether you're cutting, whether you're lining, whether you're fading, you know, that just makes for a very efficient cut. But the awesome thing that I love about this too is that similar to No Drip, the airbrush color, that the wax that comes off of this pencil is also a waterproof product. You know, whether it's like sweat or rain or whatever, like that's not something that is just gonna come off easily like that. It's something that has to be scrubbed off essentially. You know, I've had clients tell me that it won't come off until the point that they like decide to scrub their head. And if you kind of get that little T right there, you can literally just take it off there with your fingertip and just continue to spread this out here using the trimmer blade.
So the first stop that I was at, right?
So now we're gonna go ahead and get into the shaping of the beard. You know, he's definitely still gonna wanna keep a very solid beard, but we're just gonna tighten up the shape a lot. If I start here with this 1.5 guard, and I start at the top, and I just work my way down. If I were to show you again, just like how we did with the fade. So that would be like me starting here at the very top with this 1.5, full pressure, and then just elevating my way straight down. Yeah, so applying that pressure at the very top is gonna make sure that all this stays nice and flush. We're gonna do the same thing right here. You can kind of see, right, the sculpting that's happening. If we can go open, starting to go against the grain, this is gonna tighten it up a little bit more. So now we can go ahead here with the clipper all the way open, and if I elevate myself coming up, it's gonna let me catch longer lengths of hair rather than if I was flush. So I do this first before I go more flush. And here we are open, halfway, and little by little, man, look at that. You can see how easily this whole portion blended together. This, I like to make sure I keep the high speed on the 245 clipper. The slow speed is cool, you know, for like going with the grain and fading, but I like to make sure that I'm using the high speed feature, the turbo, on this clipper, especially while doing things like this, like freehanding, or if you're sculpting a fro, heavy debulking. So y'all can see this shape came together right here real clean. I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. Start at the neck and pull straight out. And this down here too, guys, is a nice little test also for this trimmer, man. Like, a lot of times this kind of hair down here at the neck just gets caught up in these trimmers. But I've been happy to tell you guys, man, like, these trimmers haven't snagged yet, man. I don't know, maybe it has something to do with the MIM blade, the new one that they made here, but I feel like far too often I really see a lot of trimmers being caught up and snagged, especially here on this Adam's apple area, man. So definitely happy to show you guys how this performs, man, without having to rip through these hairs on the neck, man. Like, it hits. All right, guys, so like pretty much if you can make sure that your client can puff out their cheek and just fill their cheek with a little bit of air, you know, this will make sure that you have a nice tight surface here to work on. So if I'm gonna be cutting downwards, I'll pull the skin in the opposite direction. Same thing here, if you're gonna catch right underneath here. Oh, bro, I think you look pretty sharp to me, man.
Wow. Yup, yeah, it's just how I like it. Just how I like it, yup. That's perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Wow.